you finally get the thing you wanted. The promotion. The relationship. The project that finally lands. The number in your bank account that felt unreachable a year ago. And for a few days, maybe a week, something in you relaxes. Like a fist finally unclenching after years of holding on. Then it starts. You're late to something that matters. You say the wrong thing to exactly the wrong person. You stop doing the one habit that got you here. You pick a fight that didn't need to happen. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a part of you watches all of this like a spectator, confused, vaguely horrified, but also, not entirely surprised. You didn't trip. You stepped off the edge. This isn't a story about failure. Failure is something that happens to you. This is about something stranger, the kind of undoing you engineer yourself, quietly, just when everything was finally working. And the most unsettling part isn't that it happens. It's who it happens to most. Not the ones who are struggling. The ones who are succeeding. There's a specific kind of person who arrives at success and then, almost systematically, begins dismantling it. They're not reckless. They're not lazy. In fact, they're often the most driven people in the room, the ones who worked the longest, sacrificed the most, and finally made it to wherever made it meant for them. And then, almost on cue, something shifts. Decisions that used to be sharp start going dull. Relationships that survived the hard years suddenly fracture. Opportunities get ignored until they expire. People on the outside call it burnout. Arrogance. Bad luck. But it isn't any of those things. It's something your brain does deliberately, even lovingly, because some part of you genuinely believes that staying here, in this place you worked so hard to reach, isn't safe. This is the psychology of self-sabotage in people who succeed. And the reason it's so misunderstood is that it doesn't look like destruction from the inside. It looks like reasonable choices, one at a time, until you've walked yourself back to somewhere that feels familiar. Somewhere that feels like home, even if home was never good. It rarely looks like what you'd expect. It doesn't look like someone blowing up their career in a single moment. It looks like showing up 5 minutes late, consistently, to the things that matter most. It looks like sending an email you knew was too sharp, right when a relationship was gaining traction. It looks like procrastinating on the one task that would move everything forward, for weeks, even though every other task gets done. You undermine the job offer by asking for something slightly unreasonable at the last minute. You stop going to the gym in the month before the event you trained for. You become uncharacteristically cold towards someone who loves you clearly, without condition, without agenda. And when asked, you have perfectly logical explanations. You were tired. It was a miscommunication. The timing wasn't right. All of those things are partially true. That's what makes this so hard to see. Self-sabotage borrows the language of reason. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up dressed as a bad day, a difficult week, a series of understandable missteps. But underneath all of it is one consistent truth: every act of undoing happened right when something good was becoming real. Here's what most people miss. Your brain is not trying to destroy you. It's trying to protect you, using the only framework it has ever trusted, which was built decades before you understood what success even meant. Researchers who study threat response have found something quietly radical: your nervous system cannot reliably distinguish between a new, unfamiliar good and a new, unfamiliar danger. Both activate the same alert system. Both create the same low hum of anxiety. Your brain processes, "This is working better than it ever has," with the same caution it would process, "Something here is wrong." So when success crosses a threshold your system hasn't experienced before, when visibility increases, when stakes get real, when people start depending on you, when failure would now cost something, your nervous system files all of that under the same category. Unknown. Proceed with caution. Or better yet, don't. The sabotage is the exit. Your brain engineers a way back to a level of success, exposure, an expectation that it recognizes, because familiar, even when it was painful, always felt more survivable than unknown, even when it was good. You are not weak for this. You are enormously human. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, minimize uncertainty. It just doesn't know the difference between a threat and a dream. This didn't start in the boardroom. It didn't start at the moment of success. It started much earlier, in the specific emotional environment where you first learned what success was allowed to feel like. Think about what happened, when you were younger, after something went well. Maybe the praise came with conditions. Good, but don't get too proud. Maybe success made you visible in ways that weren't safe, the sibling who resented it, the parent who competed with it, the household where standing out created problems instead of celebration. Maybe success meant new expectations you weren't sure you could sustain, so the easiest solution was to let the thing slide before anyone noticed how far you'd climbed. You built a ceiling. Not as a limit, but as a shelter. That ceiling became the upper boundary of what your emotional system believes is safe to achieve and maintain. Psychologists sometimes call this a success thermostat, an internalized set point that regulates how much good you allow yourself to hold before your behavior starts moving you back toward the temperature you recognize. When your success exceeds that set point, the thermostat doesn't argue with you. It doesn't warn you. It just quietly turns the heat back down. And you cooperate without knowing you're doing it. The ceiling isn't about capability. You clearly have that. It's about permission, the deep, pre-verbal belief about how much good you're allowed to keep. People who watch this from the outside have a theory. They say you're afraid of success. They say you don't really want it, that deep down you're comfortable being the underdog, comfortable with the struggle, and that some part of you prefers the story of almost making it because actually making it terrifies you. And there's a seed of truth in there. But the framing is wrong. You're not afraid of success. You're afraid of what comes after. The loss of it. The new version of yourself you'd have to become to deserve it. The possibility that people will now see you clearly, and find something unconvincing. The relationships that might shift. The expectations that will solidify into permanent pressure. You're not sabotaging the thing you built. You're protecting yourself from the version of losing it that feels most unbearable, which is losing it after you've allowed yourself to fully believe in it. If you never quite land, you never quite fall. That's not cowardice. That's a grief strategy. A preemptive one. Your system learned, somewhere early, that hope was the dangerous part, not failure. Failure you could survive. Hope that collapsed was something else entirely. So you manage the distance between yourself and the things you want. You stay close enough to work toward them. Far enough that losing them won't undo you. The tragedy isn't that you self-sabotage. The tragedy is that the strategy made sense once. And you're still using it. There's a particular experience that happens for some people, not always, not automatically, but sometimes, when they catch themselves mid-sabotage. Not in hindsight. In the act. You're about to send the email. You're standing in the kitchen picking a fight that has nothing to do with the argument you're starting. You've opened a distraction tab and you actually know in real time, that you're about to spend 3 hours doing the one thing that will not move you forward. And for a second, something pauses. Not the behavior, necessarily. But the automatic quality of it. The sleepwalking. The sense that this is just happening to you rather than something you are choosing. That pause is significant. It doesn't fix anything immediately. It doesn't dissolve the ceiling or rewrite the neural pathways built across a childhood of conditional praise and emotional arithmetic. But it breaks the agreement you didn't know you'd made, the one where the sabotage got to happen invisibly, wearing the mask of reasonable choices. When you can see it, it loses some of its authority. Not all of it. But some. And some is where everything that changes begins. Recognition doesn't require you to perform transformation. It just requires you to stop pretending the choices are random, to let yourself notice the pattern without immediately explaining it away. To stay with the discomfort of understanding that the person dismantling your progress is you, and that they're doing it for reasons that are heartbreakingly understandable. That's not a small thing. That's actually the whole thing. Here's what no one tells you about people who succeed and then sabotage it. They're not protecting their failure. They're protecting their self-concept, the deeply held, pre-rational story about who they are, how much they're allowed, and what the world does to people who reach too high. The sabotage isn't weakness. It's loyalty. Loyalty to the version of yourself that learned, very early, that wanting too much was dangerous. That version of you was right, once. They kept you safe in an environment where safety was genuinely hard to find. But the environment changed. You changed it. You built the thing, earned the thing, became the thing that younger version could never have imagined. And the old protection is still running, automated, faithful, quietly pulling you back toward the waterline every time you swim too far from shore. What would it mean to let it rest? Not to eliminate the caution. Not to stop caring about loss. But to let the part of you that has spent years building the thing you almost had, actually have it. To stop managing the distance. To let the gap between who you are and what you've built finally close. You didn't sabotage yourself because you were broken. You did it because you were trying to survive something that already ended. The survival is over. The only thing left is deciding what to do with everything you built.